everyone, it's Patty with Politically Plump, and you're watching The Brief, where we take a step back from the chaos of the headlines and try to understand what's actually happening, why it matters. So let's get into it. So today we're going to be talking about the 3 new democracy reports that came out and just said the quiet part out loud. Under Trump 2.0, American democracy is being dismantled at remarkable, unprecedented speed and pushing us toward an autocracy. So I'm going to walk you through what they actually found, what that looks like in real life, and what we can still do about it, including tomorrow's No Kings protests. So let's start with what actually dropped. First, there was a report from V Dem. V Dem. They're a research institute out of Sweden that measures the health of democracies in over 179 countries. In their 2026 report, they say, quote, democracy in the USA is deteriorating at unprecedented speed. Within just 1 year, the US score on their liberal democracy index fell by 24%, and our rank crashed from 20th to 51st in the world, right in between Slovakia and Greece. Their director, Staffan Lindberg, says that American democracy is being dismantled at a pace unprecedented in modern history, and that Trump's second term has rolled back democracy in 1 year with as much as it took Modi in India and Erdogan in Turkey 10 years, and Orban 4 years. On top of that, Freedom House has given the US its lowest freedom score since they started tracking political rights and civil liberties in the 70s. And Brightline Watch, which surveys hundreds of political scientists here in the US, now places America nearly halfway between a liberal democracy and a dictatorship on their scale. So this is not just one article. It's 3 major watchdogs all saying the same thing with data to back it up. So let's talk about the speed, because that's the part that should make all of us kind of sit up. V Dem says our democratic backsliding is faster than any other established democracy they've recorded in modern times. The line from their press release is literally says the US democracy is currently in a much faster deterioration process than any other democracy in modern times. They compare us directly to Hungary, Turkey, and India, places where leaders were elected in real elections, and then use that power to weaken courts, rewrite the rules, and tilt the system so they're almost impossible to remove. The US, in their words, is now on a similar path, but moving quicker. And they point to 2026 as a critical test because they only score elections in election years. So the 2025 indicators haven't moved at all. But they warn that if our 2026 midterms show the same kind of decline, the US will fall even further and may no longer be classified as a democracy. That's the knife edge that we're living on right now. Now, I want to be careful with the language here. These reports are not saying we woke up in a full-blown dictatorship. We still have elections, we still have courts, we still have opposition parties, protests, independent media, organizers, people who are actively resisting this. And that's why they talk about the US as autocratizing or backsliding instead of calling it a full dictatorship. But they're also very clear that we're sliding toward the end of the spectrum at record speed. The phrase one legal scholar used was that the US is now in a democratic gray zone. No longer solid liberal democracy, not yet an outright authoritarian regime either. So the question isn't, are we North Korea tomorrow? The question is, how much more erosion are we going to allow before it becomes functionally impossible to reverse? So what does that look like on the ground beyond just charts and scores? The reports point to a pretty familiar checklist. A president who talks openly about being a dictator on day one and openly praises strong men. Aggressive concentration of power in the presidency, pushing past legal limits, sidelining Congress on money, war, and oversight. Systematic attacks on media freedom, calling the press fake news and the enemy of the people, threatening outlets and rewarding the friendly ones, using the Justice Department and federal power to punish perceived enemies and protect its allies, sympathy and pardons for people who tried to overturn an election instead of treating that as a red line. And then there's the quieter stuff, the state level laws that make it harder to vote or easier to mess with results, stripping power from independent election officials and stacking courts and agencies with loyalists whose first job is to defend the leader and not the Constitution. When V Dem and Brightline Watch say American democracy is being dismantled at remarkable speed, this is what they're talking about. Not tanks in the streets, not a single dramatic coup, 1,000 incremental moves that all tilt the system toward a one-man rule. So what do we do besides panic, scroll, and feel sick? The good news, if you call it that, is that the damage is severe, but not finished. The same experts warn about backsliding also point out that courts, parts of Congress, and civil society have blocked or slowed some of the worst moves. That means there's still a fight happening inside the system. Practically, that looks like three major things. One, 2026 elections. The midterms are literally described by V Dem as a critical test for the quality of elections and democracy in the United States. That means caring about the boring offices like secretaries of state, attorneys general, local judges, school boards, city councils, anyone who touches voting rules, election administration, education, and information. Two, local and state organizing. A lot of authoritarian playbook run through states, gerrymandering, voter suppression, protest crackdowns. Pushing back there matters as much as the big federal races. Three, street pressure, like No Kings. Tomorrow, Saturday, March 28th, there's a nationwide No Kings protest with thousands of events around the country, 3,100 to be exact as of recording of this video. Organizers are expecting it to be one of the largest single days of protest in a U.S. political history, explicitly about rejecting one-man rule and reminding this administration that we have a constitution, not a king. If you're able and it's safe for you, that's one very tangible way to say, I see what's happening and I'm not okay with it. I'll have links in the show notes to the reports themselves, to my Substack piece where I break it down, and to check your voter registration, and one link to find a No Kings protest near you. I'm not interested in doom for doom's sake, and I know you aren't either, but pretending this isn't happening doesn't make it go away. If hearing the United States talked about as a country sliding toward a dictatorship doesn't sit right with you, let that be a signal, not to shut down, but to pick one concrete thing you'll do after this episode. Register, volunteer, and even show up tomorrow. Again, this is Patty with Politically Pumped. I appreciate you listening. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.